Hello and welcome to the Cancer Education Series brought to you by MercyOne and Above and Beyond Cancer. I'm Chris Goodale, the Executive Director of Above and Beyond Cancer, and it's my pleasure to introduce our founder, Dr. Dick Deming, who will introduce our speakers for this evening. Dr. Deming?
Chris, thank you so much. And it's my honor to introduce our speakers tonight. So we have two health promotion specialists from the American Lung Association, Kylie Mitchell and Kirsten Johnson. Kylie is from Des Moines. She went to East Des Moines High School, and then she got her degree at Grandview. She's been with the American Lung Association for about 7 months. Fun fact for Kylie, she also is a certified health coach and a personal trainer. So she can help us deal with all sorts of issues related to health and fitness. Next is Kirsten Johnson, and Kirsten is from Carlisle, went to high school in Carlisle, and then got her undergraduate degree at Central College in Pella. And fun fact is that Kirsten did AmeriCorps and did an AmeriCorps service in Montana, and she's been with the American Lung Association for about 5 months. We've asked them to speak to you today about e-cigarettes and alternate forms of tobacco and vaping, and you know, it really has become an epidemic. We were making a lot of progress with tobacco control over the past, I would say, 3 decades, but youth use of tobacco has really picked up with some of these alternative forms of tobacco. And I would say that as physicians, we're still trying to learn what it's all about. What does it look like? How does it work? What are the risks? What are the implications? And so I look forward to learning a lot tonight as well from Kylie and Kirsten. So I'll turn it over to both of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for those introductions, Dr. Deming, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Kirsten and I will be presenting on our vaping education presentation, e-cigarettes, an epidemic. And so first, I would like to start off by telling you a little bit about who we are and what we do. The American Lung Association is the leading organization working to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease through research, education, and advocacy. Our work is focused on 4 strategic imperatives: to defeat lung cancer, champion clean air for all, improve the quality of life for those with lung disease and their families, and create a tobacco-free future. And speaking of a tobacco-free future, we at the local American Lung Association in Iowa serve as a community partner for the Iowa Department of Public Health Division of Tobacco Use Prevention and Control. We serve Polk, Adair, Dallas, Jasper, Madison, Marshall, Union, and Warren counties. There is a community partner for every county in Iowa. And as partners, we work to achieve 4 goals from the CDC, which include prevent the initiation of tobacco use among youth, eliminate non-smokers' exposure to secondhand smoke, promote quitting among youth and adults, and eliminate tobacco-related disparities. So through our grant funding, we provide various tobacco cessation education, resources, and policy assistance free of charge in our service area. Some of our key initiatives include tobacco-free and nicotine-free work sites and childcare, smoke-free multi-unit housing, healthcare provider trainings, community outreach and education, and youth tobacco prevention programming. And so now I'd like to pass it off to Kirsten to really get us started and talk about what vaping is. Kirsten?
Sure. Thank you, Kylie. Before I get too far into this, I just want to clarify that there are a lot of terms for e-cigarettes, vapes, jewels, e-cigs. I'll probably use a lot of them throughout the presentation, but they all mean the same thing. They mean e-cigarettes. So everything we know about e-cigarettes so far is so new. E-cigarettes didn't even make it to the United States until 2007. It was shortly after that that the FDA wanted to regulate them as a drug or medical device, but they received a lot of severe backlash from tobacco and e-cigarette companies wanting them to be regulated as a tobacco device. The FDA gave in, but it wasn't until 4 years after that when they finally issued their proposal about how they were going to regulate them. So they've been on the market for a long time without a whole lot of regulations. Now, I'm not going to take you through all these bullet points, but I do want to point out this last one down here, that the legal age for purchasing tobacco and vaping products has increased from 18 to 21. So that's a really big victory for us at the Lung Association and really for health of youth across America. Slide, please. So what is an e-cigarette exactly? An e-cigarette is an electronic device used to simulate smoking by delivering an aerosol vapor to the user's lungs. You can see a lot of different types down below. One of note is the cig-alike. So it's become a popular marketing technique to encourage smokers of traditional combustible cigarettes to switch to an e-cigarette as a way to save their health. This isn't necessarily how it works, but you can get that same hand-to-mouth motion with a cig-alike. Then you also see the mid-sized ones here, the tanks and mods, and finally the pods, which I would say are most popular among the youth, but you can see how different they all look and why it might be hard to identify them. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and packages. Slide, please. So here's a bunch of different kinds here. One of note is this one down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's in that pink box and it's got a watermelon on it. That's a puff bar. So that's a new player in the e-cigarette market. We'll talk a little bit about this later, but the FDA actually banned a lot of flavorings in e-cigarettes. So you used to be able to get fun flavors like mint, fruit, things like that. And Juul, or a reusable e-cigarette or vape, is no longer allowed to sell those. However, the big loophole is that if it's a disposable, e-cigarette, those flavors are still allowed. So kids are switching to Puff Bar because that's where they get their fruity mango flavoring from. Slide. Here are some graphics created to show you just how difficult it is to identify an e-cigarette among a typical teenager's possessions. So you can see that they can blend in as lip gloss, as a highlighter, maybe a USB flash drive, or hand lotion. So it's often that parents don't know their kids are vaping. It's easy to conceal, and they're small and they blend in. So most of the time kids can hide it. Slide. There are a lot of different types of e-cigarettes, and I've already mentioned the most prominent player, Juul. Juul is what really helped e-cigarette use take off. Kylie's going to take you through some of their marketing techniques later, and you'll see exactly why it's so appealing to young kids. But Juuling has actually become its own verb. They have more than half of the e-cigarette market, and as I mentioned, with the flavor ban and them not selling disposable vapes, that number is decreasing, but they're the ones responsible for this big spike towards this epidemic of youth vaping. Slide. So all e-cigarettes basically work the same way. As you've seen, they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but they all contain the same components. They're battery powered, and that can either be a disposable battery or a rechargeable one, which powers the coil that heats the pod, which contains the liquid flavoring solution. And that liquid becomes aerosol, which is then inhaled by the user. So you can see these examples, they're built a little differently, but they all work the same. Slide. The main problematic ingredient in an e-cigarette is nicotine, because that's the addictive component that's gonna increase the usage among users. And we know that nicotine is harmful to youth, pregnant women, fetuses, but it's also harmful because it's addictive. And it's unfortunate because these are so unregulated that studies have found that even devices that are claiming to be nicotine-free actually often have traceable amounts of nicotine in them. And there's not a lot of consistency even within a brand or a labeled strength for how much nicotine is actually in that pod. So you might be looking at a package that says it contains 5 milligrams of nicotine, and after a study is done, it might find that there's 7 or 10. So really what you see is not always what you get when it comes to nicotine in vaping. Slide. Other important components are obviously the flavoring. There are tons of flavors available targeting younger kids. So you see this example here. We're all familiar with Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and it's delicious, and they created an e-liquid to match it. So you can get that cinnamon sugary taste in a liquid form to put in your vape if that's what fits your fancy. And there's mango, mint, anything you can imagine really. So kids really go crazy for the flavors. Other important chemicals to note are propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. Both of these are safe to ingest, but when they're heated with the coil in the vape, that changes their chemical composition, and that makes them unsafe to inhale. Studies have also found formaldehyde, volatile organic compounds, and heavy metals in vaping pods. So some serious stuff. Slide, please. Additionally, the University of North Carolina found that 2 of the ingredients I just mentioned, propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, are actually toxic to cells. And not only do e-cigarettes contain a lot of damaging chemicals, they produce a number. So when that liquid turns to aerosol, new chemicals are produced and released into the air, and they all fall under the category of aldehydes, which can cause not only lung disease, but heart disease as well. So this isn't just a lung issue. This is affecting more of the human body than just our respiratory system. And finally, e-cigarettes contain acrolein, which is an ingredient in herbicides to kill weeds. So imagine spraying a weed killer into your mouth for fun. That's what vaping is. Slide, please, Kylie. And of course, we know that nicotine is damaging to the brain, especially during adolescence. You know, they're going through all of these developmental changes, there are hormones, it's a big growing time for an adolescent's brain. And nicotine can permanently damage their attention span, their learning habits, their mood, their impulse control. And on top of that, it's addictive. So teens who use it will start off using it for fun, feeling in control, but eventually, if they continue use, they'll begin to feel like they have to use it, that they must, that it's a need. So it can be really dangerous. Slide, please, Kylie. And it primes the brain for addiction. So we see that youth who vape are 4 times more likely to smoke traditional combustible cigarettes. So nicotine is kind of a gateway drug. Slide. Now this is interesting. I found this fascinating when I first learned about vaping and all of the stuff that goes into making it marketable to kids. So cigarettes contain your traditional free-base nicotine. And that on a pH scale is high. It's in the blue zone, which means that it's irritating to the throat and it's uncomfortable. And e-cigarette makers, Juul manufacturers, knew that this would be a deterrent to kids using those devices. So they developed nicotine salt, which is nicotine with chemicals added to lower the pH. So it makes it a lot more comfortable and easy to use. Now, right off the bat, you might think that this is a good thing, right? It might make it healthier. That's not actually the case, because this is making it easier for kids to consume larger amounts of Juul pods and more often. So really, it's making the epidemic and the addiction worse. Slide. Now this slide, I'm going to do my best to explain it. So I've talked a little bit about how the milligrams of nicotine labeled on the package might not always be accurate. This data comes from the Juul lab. So this is what they claim is in each device. It could be more than that. It might be less. I would bet not. But we're comparing this to a traditional pack of cigarettes. So your pack of cigarettes contains 20 milligrams of nicotine. 1 Juul pod contains over double that. Now, it's not uncommon for a Juul user to go through a pod a day. So by that logic, nicotine-wise, they are a 2-pack-a-day smoker. That's how addicted they are. And that number only increases as you go up to the fixed pod and the sworn pod. Slide, please. Another common trend is modifying e-cigarettes. So there's some status and trend involved in this vaping epidemic. And so if you go on YouTube, you can actually find videos of teens teaching their peers how to modify their vape so that it produces a bigger cloud of aerosol, or in more serious instances, how they can use marijuana with their vape. And there's a big relationship between youth who vape and youth who use marijuana. They're 3.5 times more likely to use marijuana if they are vaping. But using e-cigarettes to inhale cannabis can be really dangerous, and it is linked to lung illness. One of the ingredients often found in THC is vitamin E acetate, which was actually linked to the EVALI cases that we'll get to in a little bit. And we see this number of youth who vape marijuana growing. So in 2018, it was just 7%, and then it doubled in 1 year to 14%. So it's a growing problem. Slide, please. And of course, I wanted to touch on vaping and COVID. Now, both of these are such new phenomenons that the evidence of a relationship between them is just, it's preliminary. It's only getting started. But here's what we know. I wanted to talk about how the two work together. So the aerosols e-cigarettes produce are really harmful to the cells in the lung and diminish its ability to fight infection. It also lowers the immune function of the lung and causes lung inflammation, making it much more likely for a person who vapes to experience extreme complications from COVID-19 if they're exposed. Additionally, some of the chemicals found in vaping devices, propylene glycol, glycerol, flavoring agents, have the ability to go really deep into the lungs because they're such fine particles, and that's often where they find critical COVID cases, is deep in the lungs. Slide. Kylie.
Should come off mute. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for going over what vaping is. And now I'd like to take us off into who uses e-cigarettes. Dr. Deming and Kirsten kind of gave us a little bit of a glimpse to let us know that youth are kind of our major users. But I will like to start us off by discussing some of our adult statistics that we have. So early release estimates from the National Health Interview Survey estimated that 3.7% of adults over the age of 18 are current e-cigarette users from the first quarter of 2020. So this is showing us a slow but gradual increase, in adults since 2018. While specific demographic data isn't available for 2020, the data on this slide from the 2018 National Health Interview Survey shows us that about 4.3% of men and 2.3% of women are current e-cigarette users, meaning that men are twice as likely to use e-cigarettes than women. And with age, the younger you are, the more likely you are to use e-cigarettes. And it comes down to our youth are the main ones targeted for using e-cigarettes. So as they grow from youth into young adults, we're seeing those rates rise in that age group. Also, we should note that the highest percentage of e-cigarette use as of right now is non-Hispanic white, but we do see rates in non-Hispanic Asians, Hispanics, and non-Hispanic Blacks. The rates or the statistics from 2018 don't really show much in terms of a significant difference in income in e-cigarette use, but we do know that those who use traditional tobacco, we see higher rates among those with lower income. And while e-cigarette manufacturers often say that they produce their products and they're intended for adults who want to quit smoking, we know that the youth statistics really paint a different story. So according to the 2020 National Youth Tobacco Survey, 24.3% of US youth were current e-cigarette users. And just to remind you, adult e-cigarette users in 2020 was only 3.7%. So while we are encouraged to see that about 1.8 million fewer US youth are current e-cigarette users compared to last year, we cannot forget that just 9 years ago, in 2011, youth e-cigarette use was only 1.5%. I'll say that again, 9 years ago, only 1.5%. As of 2020, we're at 24.3%. And as you can see, we still have about 3.6 million US youth still using e-cigarettes. So that means nearly 1 in every 5 high school students and 1 in every 20 middle school students are current e-cigarette users. And what's even more alarming is that just over 60% of high school students and just under 30% of middle school students use e-cigarettes at least 20 or more days per month. And while right now pre-filled pods and cartridges such as Juul are still the most commonly used device among youth, disposable options, as Kirsten mentioned, are increasing at an alarming rate. So from 2019 to 2020, disposable e-cigarette use increased almost 1,000% among high school e-cigarette users. Again, 1,000%. So we're talking last year, 2.4% used disposable e-cigarettes, and this year, 26.5%. And it increased by 400% among middle school e-cigarette users. So we're talking 3% last year to 15.2% this year. And one likely reason for that shift, as Kirsten mentioned, is the FDA ban on flavored reusable vaping devices. Now, that flavor restriction, like Kirsten mentioned, does not apply to all disposable products. So unlike the first generation of disposable e-cigarettes, like the e-cigs or the cig-alikes that Kirsten showed, these new brands and these new products are a lot more sleek. They're easily concealed. They're pre-charged for the user. They're cheaper at almost $5 or less per device. They come in a variety of flavors, and they contain sometimes even higher levels of nicotine than even Juul. And as Kirsten mentioned, Puff Bar is kind of the biggest disposable e-cigarette product on the market as of right now, and it's gaining popularity because of its similarity to Juul. And one final thing is the survey also found that more than 8 out of 10 current e-cigarette youth users report using flavored products. So most commonly used flavors among youth include mint, fruit, candy, and menthol. And this slide here just represents a few of the different disposable e-cigarettes available, as well as highlights the vast variety of flavors they come in. So I know Kirsten mentioned a few, but flavors such as grape, pink lemonade, lush ice, and OMG, orange mango guava, as well as these brightly colored packages really catch the eye of youth. And I wanted to share some statistics with you that hit a little closer to home. So I included a few charts from the most recent 2018 Iowa Youth Survey. This chart here represents youth answers for e-cigarette use in the past 30 days. About 8% of Iowa 8th grade students reported using e-cigarettes in the past 30 days, and 23% of 11th graders reported using e-cigarettes in the past 30 days. And while our youth rates are very comparable to the national rates, I like to point out that our youth that were surveyed in 2018 showed less frequent use throughout the month, at only 1% of 8th graders and 7% of 11th graders using e-cigarettes on 20 or more days per month. This next chart from the 2018 Iowa Youth Survey represents youth answers for how old they were when they first used an e-cigarette. And an overwhelming number of youth in Iowa, at 25%, stated they first used an e-cigarette when they were 15 or 16 years old. You can see, though, that even kids as young as 8 years old are starting to use e-cigarettes. So while you might be wondering why youth rates are so high when e-cigarette companies claim their products are targeted for adults trying to quit, is really the advertising that they market to youth. According to the CDC in 2016, an estimated 4 in 5 US middle and high school students were exposed to e-cigarette advertisements from at least one source. And the biggest source of advertisement came from retail stores, but youth are exposed in so many ways, including ads on the internet, social media, from their favorite influencers, television, newspapers, and magazines, just to name a few. And this slide here shows you two different but very similar advertisements. They both depict a hip, cool young man. The difference is the ad on the left is showing the Cool brand of traditional cigarettes, while the ad on the right is showing the electronic cigarette Juul. And this is just another example of how similar traditional cigarette ads and electronic cigarette ads are. This one depicting a young, beautiful woman. So why are these ads so similar? One of the main reasons is because it's really the same players making these new products. So some of the brands behind these new products are actually the same companies that produce traditional cigarettes. For example, the company that sells Cool sells the e-cigarette Blue, Marlboro sells Mark 10, and Camel sells Views. Now, Altria, the tobacco giant and maker of Marlboro cigarettes, paid $13 billion to get in on Juul. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Kirsten to talk about the health effects associated with vaping.
Yeah, so the health risks are why we're here, aren't they? Slide, please, Kylie. So we've talked a little bit about the different chemicals that are produced by e-cigarette aerosols. So we've got volatile organic compounds, nicotine, ultrafine particles that get deep into the lungs, and so much more. Slide. But something that we haven't touched on is the secondhand aerosol exposure. So aerosol exhaled contains a lot of harmful things like heavy metals and chemicals. So when you're at a restaurant or a bar and you smell that, random blueberry sweet scent, you're inhaling secondhand vape aerosol, essentially. And a common misconception, especially among parents who vape, is that it doesn't have a harmful impact on children. But that's not the case. Children are really vulnerable to this because their lungs are still developing. So this can be really harmful to them, much in the same way that traditional secondhand smoke can be. And this acceptance of vaping, especially indoors, like I mentioned, you can vape indoors. The Smoke Free Air Act doesn't prevent you from doing that. It's sort of bringing back the social acceptability of using tobacco products. Slide. Another phenomenon associated with vaping is popcorn lungs. So the name comes from an actual popcorn factory that was using diacetyl in their popcorn. Now, diacetyl is one of those chemicals that is safe to ingest, but when it's in the air or inhaled, it's dangerous. So when the popcorn manufacturers found out that a bunch of their employees were getting sick with symptoms like coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, a lot of stuff that really mimics COPD, they eliminated diacetyl from their manufacturing process. Now, if only vaping companies would provide that same courtesy to their users. But popcorn lung causes a scarring in tiny air sacs in the lungs, and it thickens and narrows the airways, making it difficult to breathe. I couldn't find more recent data than this 2015 study, but it was found back then that more than 75% of flavored electronic e-cigarettes and refill liquids had diacetyl in them. Slide. So we can't really speak a whole lot on the certain long-term health impacts of vaping because this is so new. Like I said, it only got to the US in 2007. So we really aren't sure. People haven't been doing it long enough for us to know. But we do know that the short-term health impacts include irritation of the lungs, throat, and eyes, dry cough and dry mouth, likelihood of catching a cold or flu, so compromising of the immune system. And then it can also cause more severe things like vomiting, nausea, and chest pain. Now we think, or we expect the long-term effects to be pretty serious. So acrolein, that weed killer I mentioned earlier, causes irreversible lung damage, including COPD and other lung conditions. Diacetyl causes popcorn lung, formaldehyde is known to cause cancer, and propylene, glycol, and glycerol affects a couple different things. So I'm going to do my best to explain gene expression briefly. Basically, this involves altering the DNA. So the gene expression tells the DNA how to form cells, and when that's damaged, things can get bad. That's the basic. And then the circadian rhythm is, of course, your sleep cycle. Slide, please. So I mentioned EVALI earlier, and that is the name that health experts have given this lung injury disease that we've seen pop up recently, where people who are otherwise healthy, completely healthy, normal, are coming into the hospital with severe lung and breathing complications. Now, the common denominator in these cases is that they all have recently been vaping. And it hasn't been identified that there's one single component of an e-cigarette that's responsible for this. We expect it might be related to THC. I mentioned vitamin E acetate earlier, but no one knows for sure. And there's been almost 3,000 cases of this just in the last few years, and 64 deaths of these kids who, like I said, completely healthy otherwise, vape, and then they get these severe lung complications. And over 75% of them are under 35 years old. So this is affecting our youth mostly. Slide. And a little bit more about EVALI. So the patients who have been under these investigations have reported, pretty serious symptoms from gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, to the respiratory symptoms like we would expect, and then some kind of non-specific ones like fever, chills, weight loss. And the onset of these, there's really no rhyme or reason to it. Some of them come on in a matter of days, others sort of creep up over a few weeks. So there's a lot still to be discovered about this, but we do know that no one should be using e-cigarettes. That's one way to avoid this. Slide. So of course, the American Lung Association is incredibly concerned about this new threat to lung health. And Kylie is going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing to mitigate this issue.
Thanks, Kirsten. So yes, we're going to talk about what is being done and what is available for you. So on September 1st, the American Lung Association launched our End the Youth Vaping Epidemic Initiative. The Lung Association will be using our model of education, advocacy, and research to address the epidemic. The Get Your Head Out of the Cloud Youth Vaping Awareness Campaign was created by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council to provide parents with a simple roadmap to address the dangers of vaping. The campaign offers free educational resources, including a conversation guide on our website, talkaboutvaping.org. And you should note, despite what Juul and e-cigarette companies want you to believe, switching to vaping is not quitting smoking. So e-cigarettes are still tobacco products, and the FDA has not approved any e-cigarette to be safe and effective in helping smokers quit. developing a quit plan with a healthcare provider that includes medications for adults, and coaching results in the highest rates of success in quitting smoking for good. The FDA has approved 7 medications shown to be effective for helping people quit smoking. These include nicotine replacement therapies such as gum, patches, nasal spray, inhaler, and lozenges, as well as non-nicotine replacement therapies such as bupropion and varenicline. The American Lung Association's Freedom from Smoking is our adult tobacco cessation program that has been around for over 35 years, and it's helped hundreds and thousands of Americans end their addiction to nicotine and begin new smoke-free lives. It is based on proven addiction and behavior change models. The program offers a structured, systematic approach to quitting, and its positive messaging emphasizes the benefits of better health. Freedom from Smoking is our in-person group support program ran by a trained facilitator, while our Freedom from Smoking Plus is the online version. We also have our helpline and tobacco quit line, which is free for anyone to call and speak with our experts at 1-800-LUNG-USA. The thing that we promote the most, as it's really close to home, is the Quit Line Iowa, which is the tobacco cessation program that is free and confidential for adults living in Iowa who want help quitting all forms of tobacco, including vaping. It was created and operated by National Jewish Health, and Quit Line has one of the highest success rates in the country and helps on average about 450 individuals every day from all over the US. Adults work with a specialized tobacco treatment coach who helps them prepare a quit plan, set a quit date, understand tobacco triggers, manage their cravings, and get back on track after relapses. And adults who participate receive 5 telephone coaching sessions. They may be eligible for free nicotine replacement therapies. They get a personalized welcome packet and educational materials, and they also get a suite of e-health services to supplement their phone coaching. Quitline Iowa reaches every community and offers tailored programming, including young adult, behavioral health, pregnancy and postpartum, as well as American Indian. And enrolling can be done calling 1-800-QUIT-NOW or by visiting quitlineiowa.org. The one that I'm most excited to share with you is the National Jewish Health My Life, My Quit, which is the youth tobacco cessation program, which is free and confidential for teens between the ages of 13 and 17 who want help quitting all forms of tobacco, including vaping. Teens also will work with a specialized tobacco treatment coach who helps them develop a quit plan, identify triggers for tobacco use, practice refusal skills, and obtain ongoing support for changing behaviors. And teens who participate receive 5 coaching sessions, either by phone call, text, or online chat. They do receive additional text messages with support to help them quit, as well as educational materials designed for them. And getting started is as easy as texting Start My Quit to 855-891-9989. And more information can be found at mylifemyquit.org. With that, I will turn it over to Kirsten for some final remarks.
Thank you, Kylie. So we just have some key takeaways here. So e-cigarettes are not safe. No one should be using them. Nicotine is an addictive product that's found in pretty much all e-cigarette devices, whether they say it or not. And the tobacco industry is targeting young people to get them addicted and create a new generation of tobacco users. If you know someone who is vaping, direct them to My Life, My Quit, or Quitline via the avenues Kylie talked about just now. Slide. And finally, we thought we'd end with this nice quote from the Surgeon General. To achieve success, we must work together, aligning and coordinating efforts across borders and you know what? I don't think I read that right. Across both old and new partners at the national, state, and local levels, everyone can play an important role in protecting our nation's young people from the risks of e-cigarettes. Thank you.
Those statistics are quite sobering when you really think about it, and the fact that there's young people are starting at such a early age that it's only going to get worse. You know, that is. We at Above and Beyond Cancer, we're working in January. We're going to start a program called the Cold Turkey Challenge, which is focused on smaller communities in Iowa to put together a plan to quit smoking for about 20 of their residents. And it's going to be an interesting contest. But one of the things that I learned in all that was that most people in attempting to quit take 7 to 11 times to do so. And that often the people who have quit have made it clear that it's harder to quit smoking than it is to quit using cocaine or methamphetamines. So that's also staggering to me, but very interesting. So one of the questions I had, and anybody who has a question can use the Q&A at the bottom or the chat at the bottom of your screen to be able to ask any question you like. But what are some of the deterrents that have popped up? I know the flavoring, but it sounds like they sort of go around that a little bit. One has to be 21 to buy vaping products. Is that right? That has changed, right? But yet,
yes, you're correct.
But yet 23% of high school kids have said in that survey that they have vaped recently. So how is it, and maybe there's nothing new under the sun, but do they find somebody who will sell it to them, or they have a fake ID, or how is it that they're getting around this new law?
It's like you said, Chris, it's usually they're finding someone that can provide or buy them for them and give them to them. That's why switching the law to 21 will make it harder in the future for our youth to have access, because they used to ask their 18-year-old friends, who some are still in high school, to buy those vapes for them. So with the Tobacco 21 law, it's going to help us in the future to hopefully diminish and decrease that youth rate.
So that is a law
that's a little bit to what.
So that's not yet
a little bit to what Kylie said.
It is the law, yes.
Okay.
As years go on, we will see it get a little bit less frequent that we see youth still getting e-cigarettes or vapes from their friends that are of a little bit older age.
So actually with COVID, there have been some surveys put out to youth and young adults who vape, and they have found that youth under the age of 18 are vaping less because their sources, these people that they're buying vapes from, have jacked up the prices or don't have as many available, and people who are over, or I guess 21, are vaping more because of the stress of COVID. So that's kind of the differential happening there, which I thought was really interesting.
The other thought I had was, I know that Dr. Deming and I have both lobbied with the American Cancer Society on the state capitol to increase the cigarette tax. Are vaping products taxed at the same rate as cigarettes? Because I know that the higher the tax, the more of a deterrent it is for smokers. Has that been true of vaping products as well?
Kirsten, do you have that information? I don't quite know that offhand.
I don't have that in front of me, but that's a really interesting question. I would love to get back to you with that.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. We can sure put that out there.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been really good. I don't see any other questions, but and I think we're attacking this, and I think the knowledge is so powerful. And it wasn't too long ago, a neighbor had a new neighbor move in behind them, and they asked what they did for a living, and they said, "Oh, we help people quit smoking." And they said, "Wow, how interesting. How do you do that?" And they said, "Well, we own a few vape shops." So this is exactly what you're talking about, that narrative out there that they're trying to push, that it helps people quit smoking. And you clearly illustrated the fact that that is absolutely not true. So that's I think where we have to start, is education.
When I lived in Montana, there were radio ads all the time. Quit smoking, it's so bad for you, try vaping instead. And it was constant. And I mean, that was before I worked for the Lung Association. I almost believed it.
Sure,
I did some research and figured out that that's not the case, but people who don't do the work to check it out for themselves are very susceptible to that kind of marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and parents as well might think, well, it's just, this is just something that kids do if they don't know the facts and figures. So good for you guys that you're out there spreading the not necessarily good news, but the accurate news as to what it is that's going on in the world. And it is frightening, just really, because it is so simple. And some of the things that, I'm in my mid 50s, and when my friends or high school associates, if they smoked, we knew it because you could smell it on them. And one of the things that doesn't happen in vaping is you can't smell it on people unless it's the fruity kinds of things, I guess. But and there's no ashes and all those things that sort of were telltale signs of, if your high school kid's car ashtray was full of ashes, you had a sense that maybe they were smoking. But in this case, it just isn't true. And
and they're not going to set off a smoke alarm if they do it in the bathroom. It's
right, easily hidden.
To hide.
And I don't know what the word is, but the fact that the companies make it so that they look like highlighters, or they look like things that would otherwise, cell phone battery chargers or these kinds of things that, they're just playing right into it. It's a shame. It really is.
Ordinary objects you find every day, which makes it very challenging for parents and educators, anyone really that works with youth, to be able to identify that they are actually using vaping products and potentially becoming addicted to nicotine. So that's why it's very important to spread the message about vaping is very harmful, and educating people on what they look like and how to detect them, and where they can get help for those youth that are addicted.
Mm-hmm. Well, just fascinating. And now we're all empowered to go out and change the narrative, which I think is the best place to start. Kylie, Kirsten, thank you both very much. Very informative. And as I said, we recorded this, and it will be on our YouTube channel, Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel. So starting tomorrow. So those people who weren't able to watch this evening can pick it up then. So this is good. We sure appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris.
Hey, thank you both. All right. Take care, you two.
Take care. Bye.